Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of Secrets of Strixhaven Commander deck techs. I'm releasing a new Strixhaven Commander deck every Thursday through the end of June when Marvel Superheroes drops, in addition to my usual Monday Commander deck tech videos. So if you have a request for a specific Strixhaven Commander you'd like to see me build, let me know in the comments below. As you see, today our commander is Zaffai and the Tempests, a Prismari professor with a hunger for musical experimentation. Even as a child, Zaffai's talent with the magic of tones and songs was extraordinary, and he often found his music evoked its own elemental accompaniment in the form of lightning storms. At Strixhaven, he's devoted himself to the mysteries of those elemental roots of music, and he serves as the Grand Maestro for the university's Orchestra of the Arcane. Pictured here, however, we see him and the band he formed with his bravest grad students, calling themselves the Tempests and planning to create a spectacular magical display as they close out Summerfest. Get your tickets now! I'm excited to show you what I put together for Zaffai, but before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a cool card and why I wanted to build a deck for it. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward doing whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play commander. So let's talk about our commander. Zaffai and the Tempests is a 5/7 legendary human bard sorcerer for 5, a blue, and a red, so a 7-mana commander. It only has one ability. Once during each of your turns, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand without paying its mana cost. So I have a little bit of a soft spot for Zaffai. My first commander precon was the C21 Prismari deck with Zaffai's original printing at the helm. Even though I usually ran it with Veyron in the command zone, I was always excited to get the Maestro on the field. Izzet is already a fast, splashy color combination, so running a theme of huge, exciting spells and having Zaffai blast a random opponent for a quarter of their starting life total was just icing on the cake. That's why I'm thrilled that his new card is more of the same. This version of Zaffai doesn't make tokens or fire lightning, presumably so as not to steal focus from him and his bandmates, but he does give us a free spell on each of our turns. And although Zaffai doesn't spell it out for us that he wants to see us cast only the biggest, most impressive instants and sorceries, it's implied by the fact that he only lets us cheat on mana for one of our spells, so we need to make it count. The issue with being a spellslinger deck centering on big, expensive spells is that we need to build up to them. The same is true of our 7-mana commander, in fact, so we can't just stuff our sleeves with every 9-drop non-permanent in the game and call it a day. We have to ramp hard, keeping our foot on the accelerator and fielding some defenses so that we can stay alive while we wait for Zaffai to take to the stage, all the while ensuring we have enough cards in hand so that we can do something big the moment he comes out of the green room. So that's the composition of our musical deck. We have a bunch of high-cost spells that are as eye-catching as they are impactful, and we've booked plenty of less expensive role players to serve as our opening acts. Once the band kicks off, we can make every one of our turns a showstopper, accumulating value that we can use to carry us to victory before the curtain falls. We have some fun experimental stuff to try too, between new Strixhaven cards and unexpected moments for the table, but everyone likes it when you play the hits. That's why we have a nice recursion package to bring our spells back from the graveyard and a bunch of copy effects to make sure no one misses a note. Our tracks are fire, so we're bringing a little bit of burn to the Summerfest show, and we have plenty of tokens to keep the pit full. And that is our end goal. We don't win fast, but no one likes a concert that's over too quickly. We're already out of the house, so if we're not going home, we might as well go big. The dark clouds gather as we tune up, but no one in the audience seeks shelter from the storm. Lightning crashes, and our cards fall like fire and rain as the blues and reds of Prismari magic make that rain purple. Luckily for us, we're only happy when it rains, and we blow away our opponent's threats as we rock them like a hurricane. None of them can doubt the volume of the spells we've turned up to 11, and by the end of the show, they're too thunderstruck to ask for an encore. You'll enjoy this deck if you like finding your way through crescendos of sequencing challenges that turn free spells into finales, or if the chance to play a torrent of sweet, splashy bombs makes you feel like you're walking on sunshine. And don't it feel good? So, this Moxfield list we're going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will find a considering section, filled with cards that I considered putting in the deck, but ultimately which, for me, did not make the cut. However, if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, and if you've got a smaller one, good luck. This is a pretty cheap deck. Or if you like what I've done and you want to do more of it, or if you're interested by some of the things I've done and you want to sort of juke into a different way of building this, that considering section is a great place for you to begin when you build your own Zaffai and the Tempests deck. So let's get started with the most exciting part of our deck, our big spells. These are all spells that are sorceries or instants that are at least mana value 5. That's just sort of where I drew the cutoff. There's plenty of 4-drops as well, but we want to get a lot of value out of Zaffai, so being able to cast a free spell on each of our turns, it does not say it has to be our first spell. It's just gives us the option to cast any instant or sorcery from our hand, as long as it's from our hand, without paying its mana cost once during our turns. So, sometimes the sequencing matters depending on the spells, but it's great that Zaffai and the Tempests does not force us to sequence in a certain way. So these are all the big splashy effects that we want to see. We're going to start with Baral's Expertise. This is 3 and double blue for a sorcery that says return up to 3 target artifacts and or creatures to their owner's hands. So this is a good way for us to bounce our own things if we want to, but it's really more of a, an unsummon for 3 creatures or artifacts or some combination of them to help us slow our opponents down as sort of a tempo play. We also get to cast a spell, mana value 4 or less, from our hand without paying its mana cost. Sometimes that can be a protective spell, a creature, it doesn't have to be an instant or sorcery, so we want to cast Baral's Expertise. If we're doing it for free, we want to do it when we've got something else in our hand that we can cast as well. Since it's a sorcery, we're not using it reactively as a bounce spell to protect us on someone else's turn. So yeah. Next we have Creative Technique. This is originally from the C21 Prismari deck that I was talking about. This is 4 and a red for a sorcery with Demonstrate. Demonstrate means when we cast it, if we want to, we can just make a copy of it. And if we do, we choose an opponent and they also get to make a copy. So either we cast this and we don't demonstrate it and it just has its effect, or we do demonstrate it, we get a copy that will resolve before our spell, and we choose an opponent who has to copy it, and their copy will resolve before our copy and our spell. So it resolves with the opponent, then our copy, then our spell. That's how Demonstrate works. But what does it do? It says shuffle your library, then reveal cards from the top of it until you reveal a non-land card. Exile that card and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, and you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So I tried to, for the most part, stay away from cards in this deck that require us to exile spells, because Zaffai and the Tempests lets us cast a spell from our hand without paying its mana cost. However, this is exiling spells as part of the resolution of Creative Technique, so it's not a big deal. But it is nice to be able to say, we get to find whatever spell we see first, and as you can see from this section, we have plenty of spells that are big spells. So we have a pretty good chance of finding either something small and valuable or something big and even more valuable. So yeah, there we go. Fiery Encore is next, another originally Commander 21 card. 4 and a red for a sorcery that says discard a card, then draw a card. So we don't even have to have a card in hand to start this off. When you discard a non-land card this way, Fiery Encore deals damage equal to that card's mana value to target creature or planeswalker. So this is a solid removal spell because we have plenty of expensive cards in our deck, and we also have ways to get them back. We've got a little bit of recursion, like I mentioned. So being able to discard something and know that you have at least one way probably to get it back, or that we'll be able to draw into that way, is pretty nice as a way to kill a planeswalker or hopefully kill a creature. And Fiery Encore has Storm. What's so great about that is Storm means when we cast this spell, we make a copy of it for each spell we cast or that was cast before this turn. So if an opponent cast a spell on our turn and tried to kill one of our creatures, maybe they did, hopefully it's not Zaffai and the Tempests, but if we cast a spell before it, it'll count either one of those things. Like if we cast a spell and they countered it, then that's 2 spells that have been cast this turn, the one we cast and the counter spell that an opponent cast. So when we then cast Fiery Encore, whether we do it with Zaffai and the Tempests or by just paying 5, we're going to make 2 copies of it, giving us a chance to discard and then draw, and hopefully do damage to a creature or planeswalker based on the mana value of what we discarded, a total of 3 times. 2 copies and the original. So yeah, pretty nice as a way to put things in our graveyard that we can get back, a way to draw into better things, and hopefully, if we're discarding things that have a mana value greater than 0, we're doing some damage to stuff and getting even more copies. Next is Mystic Confluence. This is one of our interactive spells for the most part, but we can do multiple things with it. It's an instant for 3 and double blue that says choose 3 and you may choose the same mode more than once. We can counter a spell unless its controller pays 3, so mana leak. We can return a creature to its owner's hand, or we can draw a card. So what's nice about a counter spell is that it can protect us. If someone is trying to counter one of our spells, or rather, if they're trying to remove one of our creatures, or they're going to cast a board wipe that would mess us up, whatever it may be that they're trying to do to us that we don't want them to do, or do that affects us that we don't want them to do, Mystic Confluence can essentially say, pay 5 mana, and they get their spell countered unless they pay 9, because we can choose this mode 3 times, if we want to. We've also got ways to just copy our spells, so we might be able to get Mystic Confluence multiple times, and just make one version of it, say you have to pay 3, but then we've since that mode is going to be the same for our next, for our copy of our spell, it'll hit them twice. So protective spells are pretty nice, and also it doesn't have to protect us from a spell that they're casting that, could affect us. It could be us countering their commander, or countering their giant Galta, or whatever it may be. Counter spells are pretty powerful. Now, most players in Commander, before too long, have a lot of mana. But being able to activate or to choose this mode multiple times can really goozle someone. But if we don't want to counter a spell, we can always just bounce a creature. Bouncing creatures is a great way, especially at instant speed, to mess up someone's combat math, to force them to have to recast their spell either that same turn, or hopefully we've timed it so they don't have enough mana to recast that spell that turn, and they have to wait till the next turn. Yeah. And if we don't need to bounce a bunch of creatures or counter any spells, or we just don't need to use these first 2 modes a total of 3 times, every other time we do it, we can draw a card. Or maybe we just use Mystic Confluence as a 5 mana draw 3. Or maybe we're copying it and it's a 5 mana draw 6. Or maybe we're not paying for it at all with Zaffai and it's a free draw 3. What's better than Ancestral Recall? Ancestral Recall that costs no mana. Yeah. Next up, we have Prisoner's Dilemma. This is one of my the most exciting card in the deck in terms of like a fun thing to do at the table that no one will enjoy, but everyone will sort of enjoy the minigame of. This is just cool. This is 3 and double red for a sorcery that says execute the Prisoner's Dilemma and take damage, basically. Each opponent secretly chooses Silence or Snitch, then the choices are revealed. Notably, this is only each opponent, it's not us. And then it says, if each opponent chose Silence, Prisoner's Dilemma deals 4 damage to each of them. If they each chose Snitch, it deals 8 damage to each of them. And if there was any other result, if it's not unanimous, if some chose Silence and others chose Snitch, Prisoner's Dilemma deals 12 damage to each who chose Silence. So meaning, if everyone chooses Silence, then great, everyone takes the least amount of damage. But if everyone chooses Silence except for one person who chooses Snitch, then the Snitch loses no life and the Silent choosers lose 12. That's just really fun. It's especially fun because if somebody doesn't do the thing that benefits everyone the most and chooses to have themselves benefit more and everyone else take more damage, you can immediately flash it back, or flash it back next turn, whatever it may be. And when you flash it back, everyone remembers the decision that everyone else made the first time. So just really fun, like, politics at the table. It's even better in this deck because we have spell copying effects. So if we cast Prisoner's Dilemma and copy it, one version's going to go on the stack, everyone's going to make their decisions and take damage, and then the second version resolves, and then we get to see those choices be made a second time. And we can flash it back and hopefully copy that one too. So yeah, lots of fun with the Prisoner's Dilemma. Next we have Rousing Refrain. This is one of the C21 Prismari cards that's super cool, that's an auto-suspend card. This is 3 and double red for a sorcery that adds an amount of red to our mana pool equal to the number of cards in target opponent's hand. Add 1 red for each card in target opponent's hand. And until the end of turn, we don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. So we just get to keep that red mana all turn until the end of turn. Nice. And as part of this, we exile Rousing Refrain with 3 time counters on it. Time counters are used in several ways, but particularly by the suspend mechanic, because we can suspend this 3 for 1 and a red instead of casting it for its casting cost. Suspend means we can pay the 1 and a red and we exile it and we put 3 time counters on it. At the start of our upkeep, we take off a time counter, and when we take off the last one, we can cast this still during our upkeep, even though it's a sorcery, without paying its mana cost. But what's cool about it is Rousing Refrain, as part of its resolution, exiles itself with time counters on it. So it will, every 3 turns, cast itself from exile. Just really cool. Goes away with 3. Start of our upkeep, we take off 1. Start of our upkeep, we take off 1. Start of our 3rd upkeep, so 3 turns later, it takes off the last one and we get to cast it again. And that mana stays around in our pool, even though we may have cast it in our upkeep. So yeah, we get to keep casting the spell over and over. It might have been free the first time, thanks to our commander, but even if not, we may just say, well, we'll cast this in 3 turns when we're likely to need the mana more, and then we just pay the 2 for it, and we wait. That seems pretty good. Maybe we use this on turn 2, and then on turn 5, the mana we make from Rousing Refrain, it allows us to play Zaffai and the Tempests. So it ramps us into our commander, who is expensive, and then we just wait a few more turns, we get to do it again. I really like the refrains. We are running the other one as well, and we'll see it when we get to the 6 drops. Next, we have Abstract Performance. This is a new Secrets of Strixhaven commander card. 5 and a blue for a sorcery that says exile the top 4 cards of your library in a face-down pile, then exile the top 4 cards of your library in a face-down pile. So basically you exile the top 8, the first 4 in one pile, the second in another pile, but they're face down. No one gets to look at them. Then an opponent chooses one of those piles, completely blind. We put that pile into our graveyard. That means now everyone knows what was in that pile because the graveyard's a public zone. Then we get to look at the other cards in the other pile, and we can cast a spell from among those without paying its mana cost and put the rest in our hand. So this is ultimately, for 6 mana, mill 4, draw 3, or rather mill 4 and draw 4 and cast one of the ones you drew for free. So since, it's all face down, it doesn't ultimately matter which pile someone chooses unless someone has a peak effect, or someone has an effect that makes everyone play with the top of their library revealed, or maybe someone has, memory lapsed something to the top of our library so they know what could be on top and they know which pile it's going to be in, so they want to either deny that to us or give it to us because something else might be there. There's lots of fun things you could do with Abstract Performance. In our deck, it's really just a way to put things in our graveyard that we can recur, to put things in our hand, and to give us another free spell. Seems cool. Next is Inspiring Refrain. It's the blue refrain. This is 4 and double blue for a sorcery that draws us 2 cards and then exiles itself with 3 time counters on it, and it suspends 3 for 2 and a blue. So it costs 1 more generic up front and 1 more for the suspend, and what it is divination, which doesn't seem like much, but being able to draw a free 2 extra cards every 3 turns is very strong. Lots of fun. Next up, we are running Season of Weaving. This is actually one of our board wipes, but it does a lot of things from Bloomborough. This is 4 and double blue for a sorcery that says choose up to 5 paw prints worth of modes. You may choose the same mode more than once. So basically we have a little resource here, which is the paw prints. We have 5 of them, and we can, decide how we want to distribute them. So we can, if we want, just to make this a 6 mana draw 5. That's pretty good if we want to put all 5 paw prints into the first mode. If we do 2 paw prints, we can choose an artifact or creature we control and make a token that's a copy of it. Sure, we've got plenty of powerful creatures and some good artifacts, and, making a copy of one of those would be nice. Although, it doesn't make the copy non-legendary, so we've got to be careful if we choose this effect. Unless we're also choosing this last one. 3 paw prints lets us return each non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand. So everyone bounces everything of theirs that isn't a land or a token. Which means, if we have one of our many token-producing effects in this deck, we probably still have some creatures in play after we choose this 3rd mode of Seasonal Weaving. And if we've done that and chosen to draw 2 cards with it, for our 5, 2 here, and 3 here. That's pretty good. A couple of cards, and we keep all our tokens, and we can start replaying our spells whenever we're ready to. However, if we chose the 2-paw mode and the 3-paw mode, here's how this works. I mentioned you don't want to make a copy of a creature that's legendary, because you'll have to legend rule one of them. But you don't check state-based actions, which is when the legend rule is checked, until someone would receive priority, and no one receives priority during the resolution of a spell. What that means is, for example, let's say that the entire board is crowded. Everyone's got a bunch of creatures out. And we have a bunch of creatures out too, including Zaffai and the Tempests. We could choose to make a copy of our commander and to bounce all the non-land, non-token permanents. Making a copy of our commander will not trigger the legend rule until after Season of Weaving is completely resolved. Meaning, we make a copy of Zaffai and the Tempests, and then we bounce all the non-land, non-tokens on the battlefield, including our original, and then state-based actions check. And we only have one permanent that's legendary called Zaffai and the Tempests in play. It's that token copy we made. So we have a new commander, or a new, copy of our commander, I should say, with the original in our hand, which isn't just great because we get to keep our powerful 7-drop commander in play, essentially, as well as wipe the board of everything that isn't a token, but also this new version, this copy of Zaffai and the Tempests, has not given us, we haven't used the once per turn cast a free instant or sorcery with it. We use the one that our original, the actual card, Zaffai and the Tempests, our commander, gave us. So we get to cast another one. So if we happen to have another sweet instant or sorcery in hand, we can go ahead and cast it right then. Probably, if it's a draw spell, that's not so great for us because we just put all of our non-land, non-permanents back into our hand, but still, being able to cast something else for free right away sounds like a lot of fun. And yeah, again, if you're not doing this cool 2 and 3 trick, you can always draw some cards from it too. Next up is Surge to Victory. This is a card that I truly, truly loved from that C21 deck, and it's great in this deck because of all the tokens we have. So this is 4 and double red for a sorcery that exiles target instant or sorcery from our graveyard. Then our creatures all get a power bonus until end of turn equal to the mana value of the instant or sorcery that we exiled. And whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player this turn, we copy the exiled card and we can cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So we're casting copies of the spells every time we hit. So if, for example, we cast Prisoner's Dilemma, and then it's in our graveyard, and we cast Surge to Victory before we go to combat because it's a sorcery, we can exile Prisoner's Dilemma, and all of our creatures will get +5/+0, since 5 is the mana value of Prisoner's Dilemma. Then, when any of our creatures do combat damage to a player this turn, which maybe they won't because they've gotten bigger powers, but maybe they will because our opponents are willing to take the damage because otherwise they lose their blockers. Probably a crazy choice, because whenever that happens, any of our creatures that do damage give us a copy of Prisoner's Dilemma we can then cast, and we can cast them all right away. It doesn't say you may cast it this turn or until end of turn. It says you may cast it without paying its mana cost, which means right away. So let's say we had 3 creatures swing in and do damage. All of them are doing 5 extra damage, and all of them are casting Prisoner's Dilemma for us. So we've got 3 Prisoner's Dilemmas on the stack. Very, very cool. I really like Surge to Victory. It definitely is a card that doesn't work in some instances if we don't have enough creatures, if our opponents have enough blockers, or enough blockers that can shut down our attack, or, if we just don't have a great instant or sorcery in our graveyard yet. However, the times when this is good, it's very good. And when it goes to the graveyard, hopefully we can recur it and do it again with a different card. Neat. Next we have Will of the Teamer from the Tarkir Dragonstorm Commander product. This is 5 and a blue for a sorcery that says choose one, and if you control a commander as you cast a spell, you may choose both instead. Usually we're going to, because if we can help it, we don't want to cast Will of the Teamer unless we can do it for free with our commander. But sometimes it's worth it, because it says, Mode 1, create a token that's a copy of target permanent, except it's a 4/4 dragon creature with flying in addition to its other types. It does not say non-land permanent. So if we've got 6 mana and we're desperate for more mana, we can make a copy of one of our lands, and it's a 4/4 dragon with flying, which means we can't tap it for mana that turn since it's a creature and therefore has summoning sickness, even though it's still a land as well. Yeah. But we can also copy any permanent on the battlefield. It could be a token, it could be one of our creatures, one of our artifacts, anything of our opponents that they control. Yeah, just for 6 mana. I mean, 6 mana is a lot, but making a 4/4 flying dragon that is also a Panharmonicon, that is also, whatever else we may need it to be, is very strong. The only thing we care about is remembering that if we are copying a creature that has a bigger power and toughness than 4/4, our copy will still be a 4/4. We don't get to choose the power and toughness. The effect chooses for us. The other mode is we can have target player draw cards equal to the greatest mana value among permanents that we control. So, if our highest mana value among our permanents is our commander, that's a draw 7. That's pretty great for us. It's also the case that if the highest mana value among permanents we control is this copy, because it will copy the card and just make it a 4/4 dragon with flying in addition to its other types, but it retains its mana value, getting to do both of these might mean drawing more cards than we otherwise would have if we had only used this single mode, depending on the comparison of the mana values. But this is just a really strong effect in a deck with a 7 mana commander. So yeah. Next up is Brass's Bounty, a reference, of course, to Admiral Beckett Brass, who was my first non-precon commander deck that I built. 6 and a red for a sorcery that says, for each land you control, make a treasure. It's that simple. Love it. Just add a whole bunch of treasures. They don't even come in tapped. So we can use this either as sort of a ritual, like casting this for free with our commander and making a bunch of treasures and then casting some more stuff. Or we can just cast this as a 7 mana sort of a bank spell. We can hang on to that treasure until the next turn or the turn after. It may be the case that we want to cast this because it looks like a board wipe's coming and our commander's not in play. Instead of spending 7 on our commander, we spend it on Brass's Bounty, make a bunch of treasures, let the board wipe resolve on, whomever it seems like is going to cast its turn, and then on our next turn, we can cast Zaffai and the Tempests, hopefully cast something for free, and also have enough treasures to cast something else. Neat. Next we have Call the Skybreaker. This is a card that I've often looked at and said, this is too much mana for what it does, but in this deck, it's so good. 5 and double Izzet hybrid mana, so we can cast this for 5 and double blue, 5 and double red, or 5 of blue and red, for a sorcery that makes a 5/5 blue and red elemental creature token with flying. Just a 5/5 flyer for 7. It's French vanilla, it's weird looking, that's what Shadowmoor gives us. That's pretty solid. A big flying creature, yeah, that's okay for 7 mana, especially since our commander can let us cast it for free. But it's not just that, it's that it has Retrace. Retrace says we can cast it from our graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to paying its other costs. That's sweet. So being able to use this as a way to, keep getting back Call the Skybreaker, it essentially turns all of our lands in hand, if we're drawing a bunch of cards, into a way to continually recast this and get more and more 5/5 flyers. Sweet. Next up is Hit the Motherlode. This is 4 and triple red for a sorcery that says Discover 10. To discover, we exile cards from the top of our library until we find a non-land with mana value 10 or less. We don't have any non-lands with greater than mana value 10 in this deck. Then we get to cast it without paying its mana cost, or we can put it in our hand, and we put the rest of the cards we exiled on the bottom of our library in a random order. So basically, we find the next non-land in our deck, and we get to cast it or put it in our hand. And if its mana value is less than 10, which it will be, we make a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to the difference. So Hit the Motherlode is sort of the new Brass's Bounty. It lets us actually find a spell and cast it, or draw it, essentially, and then get some treasures, but those treasures are tapped, rather than just only getting treasures, but they come in untapped. So Hit the Motherlode is actually, for the spells that we can cast, it's often extremely powerful and a good choice for us to find if we're able to tutor for a spell. I don't put a lot of tutors in my deck that find non-lands, but we have a couple in this deck, for instants and sorceries, and Hit the Mother Lode is often a really fun one. It puts treasures into play, but we can't use them right away, so no one's real mad or like worried that we're going to be ritualing and like, storming off, because it's not a storm deck. But it does find us something random, and we either get a bunch of treasures and something small, or we get a few treasures and something like Call the Skybreaker or Season of Weaving, something really big. So yeah, I like the sort of randomness of it. Next, we have Hunted by the Family from the Doctor Who decks. This is 5 and double blue for a sorcery that is a removal spell for us. It says choose up to 4 target creatures we don't control, and for each of them, that creature's controller faces a villainous choice, meaning they get to choose one of these 2 effects for each of the creatures. Either that creature becomes a 1/1 white human creature and loses all abilities, so a straight up humble effect, or we get a token that's a copy of that creature. So we choose the scariest 4 creatures on the battlefield. We do have to choose 4 distinct ones. We can't choose the same creature multiple times. And either we completely disempower those creatures, or we get a copy of them too, or some mix of the 2. So a pretty fun effect, especially if our opponents are playing creature heavy or like very valuable decks. It's also the case that we usually have fewer than 4 opponents, which means we can just hit all of their commanders if we want to. And they either get to give us a copy of their commander, which is what they'll do, rather than turn their commander into a 1/1. Not always, but often. Simply because their commanders are probably not something we can use as easily. But if we can, it's worth targeting. If not, they're probably not going to humble their commander, so we can get a copy, and that's fine. But yeah, it's usually best to just choose the 4 most powerful creatures on the battlefield. And if a commander is in that, that's nice. Next, we have Volcanic Vision. This is 5 and double red for a sorcery that says return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So regrow an instant or sorcery. That's great. And Volcanic Vision deals damage equal to that card's mana value to each creature your opponents control. This is a board wipe. In our deck, we have so many big instants and sorceries. Getting to put Hunted by the Family back in our hand is doing 7 damage to everyone's creatures other than ours. Seems really good. And then we exile Volcanic Vision. We can't keep doing this, but still pretty nice being able to put back into our hand something that was very strong and to do a board wipe that doesn't affect us in the process. So think about this. We've gotten to the point where our commander is out, which means, at least for a moment, we had 7 mana we could cast our commander with. We then cast Volcanic Vision. We get back a 7 mana spell, or like a big spell of some sort that we have, and we do it with our commander's ability so that we can do it for free. We have board wiped, we have cast a big spell, so we have any payoffs from that, and we still have the mana lying around that we might be able to use to recast that instant or sorcery we got back from our graveyard. Really strong. Next up, we're running Wisdom of Ages. This is a cool spell. It is 4 and triple blue for a sorcery that says return all instants and sorcery cards from your graveyard to your hand. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game, and exile Wisdom of Ages. So this is a cool one from Secrets of Strixhaven. It's a way for us to say, yeah, we could do a couple things like, Surge to Victory by exiling an instant or sorcery from our graveyard. We do get another bite at the apple if one of our creatures attacks in and does damage, but it's gone forever. Or Volcanic Vision, yeah, we get to bring one of our instants and sorceries back, and we get to do I would say one-sided board wipe, but an asymmetric board wipe. There you go. But yeah, then we exile Volcanic Vision, and it's gone. Wisdom of the Ages lets us get back every one of our instants and sorceries. So not ideal for us if we're doing it as our sort of first spell that we cast with Zaffai, but once we've cast a few other spells, even if it's just a couple of them, spending 0 mana with Zaffai to get back 2 big spells that we could probably cast at least one of that turn and the other one of the next turn sounds like a lot of fun. We're running Dig Through Time, of course. Gotta run Dig Through Time. It's 6 and double blue for an instant with Delve that lets us exile cards from our graveyard while we're casting it, and if we do, each one we do pays for one of the generic mana in the cost. So we could delve away 6 cards and pay double blue for this, and that's it. Or we could just cast it for free with our commander. Dig Through Time lets us look at the top 7 of our library and put 2 in our hand and the rest on the bottom in any order. We get to choose the order. It's not relevant to us, but it's kind of cool. So Delve is a nice way for us to use some of the cards that we may be throwing away or maybe going to our graveyard that we cannot recur since they're not instants and sorceries. So if we've discarded or milled or something some lands, maybe we've discarded some lands to retrace Call the Skybreaker, we're probably not getting them back, so we might as well use them to delve away some of the cost of Dig Through Time. Pretty good. If we're not doing that, though, we can use it to delve away some of the cost of Treasure Cruise. 7 and a blue for a sorcery that also has Delve that says draw 3 cards. So if we can delve away all 7, it's a blue for draw 3, which is Ancestral Recall at sorcery speed. Or we just cast it for free with our commander, and it's even better. Very nice. Explosive Singularity is next. This is a card that I went back and forth about including in this deck. It's really cool from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. And it's definitely usable, and it's really cool to recur it, and there's just neat stuff we can do with this. It's also 10 mana, so we don't get any treasures of it if we, hit the mother load into it. But that's still pretty good because it is a sorcery that does 10 damage to any target. Being able to have a copy effect with this is unbelievable. You just Zot something for 10 and something else for 10, or somebody's big commander or giant creature for a total of 20, or you hit someone's face for 20. This can end the game and can do it for multiple players if we copy it. So it's just a big effect. But in addition, when we cast it, we can tap any number of untapped creatures we control, and each one pays for a generic mana of this. So it's not quite Convoke, but it's similar to it. So if we have a bunch of tokens, we can just tap out a bunch of our tokens, make Explosive Singularity smaller, and cast it in addition to something else. Or maybe we don't have to use our free Zaffai casting for the turn on Explosive Singularity since we have so many other things. Or, imagine this, tapping half your creatures to cast Explosive Singularity and killing the biggest, scariest blocker. Then, using Zaffai to cast Surge to Victory for free, exiling Explosive Singularity, giving all of your creatures +10/+0, and if any of them hit, which they probably will because you just used Explosive Singularity to kill a blocker, each one that hits is going to trigger, and we're going to get to cast Explosive Singularity again, probably killing that opponent. Is this Magical Christmas Land? Yes, but that's what we're doing here with our big mana Izzet deck. Just lots of fun. Finally, we have another Strixhaven Commander card, Secrets of Strixhaven Commander card. This is 8 and double red for a sorcery that costs 1 less for each instant and sorcery in our graveyard. This is another way we get a little bit of value from our cards going to the graveyard. It says for each opponent, we make 2 3/3 blue and red elemental creature tokens with flying that attack that opponent this turn if able, and they gain haste until end of turn. So essentially, for 10 mana, if we have 3 opponents, we make 6 3/3 flyers, and 2 of them are going to go at each opponent. Assuming those tokens survive, we get to keep them. Having 6 3/3 flyers is nothing to sneeze at, even in a game like Commander where creatures can get really big. So yeah, this is pretty nice, especially if we're ending up casting it for free with our Commander, or to cast it, for cheaper if we've got some instant sorceries in our graveyard. If we were to do the thing I just described with Surge to Victory, and we can cast this several times, it doesn't matter that we're casting them during combat, they just won't be able to attack that turn, so we're just going to hang on to our 3/3 flyers. Neat. And that covers all of the spells in our big spells section. I've been talking about copying spells, and so let's talk about our copy spells here. We've got 9 different ways to do it. Galvanic Iteration is one of them. This is a blue and a red for an instant that says when you next cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell, and you can choose new targets for the copy. So Galvanic Iteration needs to be cast first. We don't cast this once the spell we want to copy is already on the stack. We have to cast Galvanic Iteration before we cast our next instant or sorcery. And then Galvanic Iteration has to resolve, creating a delayed trigger that will copy our next instant or sorcery this turn. So we spend a blue and a red, cast this, let it resolve, then we use Zaffai and the Tempests to cast our big spell that we want to copy for free. It will trigger this delayed trigger, we'll get a second copy of it on the stack, they'll both resolve. That's how it works. We can also flash Galvanic Iteration back for 1 a blue and a red. So we get to copy spells twice with it, which is pretty nice. It is possible, if we wish, to say, oh, we've got Hit the Mother Load in our hand and our commander's in play. I want a lot of value from Hit the Mother Load. So I'm going to pay a blue and a red to cast Galvanic Iteration. And then I'm going to cast Galvanic Iteration from the graveyard for an additional 1 a blue and a red. The first casting will see the second casting and trigger and essentially give us, it will make a copy of the second one, which just means we get 2 copies set up for the next thing we do. At that point, we cast Hit the Mother Load, we will get 2 copies of it, so a total of 3 castings on the stack. And that's pretty good. Yeah. This is not so much Magical Christmas Land because we've got a lot of mana in this deck, and being able to spend 5 mana in a turn before we cast something for free with our commander is pretty easy. That's why we've also got Increasing Vengeance. This is a double red instant that says copy target instant or sorcery spell you control, and if this spell was cast from a graveyard, copy it twice. You can choose new copies. So as opposed to Galvanic Iteration, Increasing Vengeance is cast once we've already cast the spell we want to copy. This is us targeting a spell that's already on the stack, as opposed to Galvanic Iteration, which sets up a delayed trigger that copies the next thing we cast. So they work differently from each other, so it's worth noting. But it also has flashback for 3 and double red. Now that's a lot more than the 1 a blue and a red that Galvanic Iteration flashes back for, but as we just saw, if this is cast from a graveyard, we get to copy the spell that we're copying twice. So we're paying 5 mana to get 2 extra copies, and that's pretty great. That's the total amount of mana that we would have to spend to cast and then flash back Galvanic Iteration in order to get 2 copies as well. So yeah, very nice. And I know you're thinking, but don't you normally use the Mystical Archive printings of your cards if you can? I normally do, but this is a 66-cent printing, and the Mystical Archive one is $4.60, so there's no reason to pay an extra $4 just to have it look beautiful unless you really want to. And I wanted to try and shoot for a really fun, big, splashy Spellslinger deck less than 70 bucks. So yeah. Next we have Rutha, Mercurial Artist. This is a card that back when I was evaluating cards differently, I thought was bad. This card is great. This is 1 a blue and a red for a 1/4 legendary Orc Shaman. She's the iconic Prismari Mage. With the ability, if we pay 2 and bounce Rutha to our hand, we can copy an instant or sorcery we control. Again, we're copying a spell that's already on the stack, and we can choose new targets for the copy. So Rutha is 2 mana, copy a spell you already are casting. Presumably one that we've cast that's huge, that we cast for free with our commander. Then we just pay 3 mana, put Rutha back in play, and she's ready to do it again. And because Rutha does not have to be tapped to do this, if we have the mana for it, imagine we've got 7 mana available, Rutha and Zaffai are both in play. We cast Call the Skybreaker with our commander for free. We activate Rutha, make a copy of it, and we get 2 5/5 flyers. After that's done, we recast Rutha, and if we have enough mana to activate her again in addition to casting another spell, we could do that again that same turn. Sweet. Next we have Rawl, Storm Conduit. This card is awesome. This is from War of the Spark. It's 2 a blue and a red for a 4 loyalty Rawl Planeswalker. He's having a good time. That has a Magecraft trigger. It doesn't say Magecraft, but it's the first trigger, I believe in Magic, that is phrased this way, which is the phrasing of Magecraft, which is whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery. When we do that, Rawl does 1 damage to an opponent or Planeswalker. So it hit Planeswalkers, so it's technically, an interactive effect, but we're typically just pinging opponents with this. It's only 1, and it's target opponent, not each opponent, but it's something every time we cast or copy an instant or sorcery, which we're doing a lot of in this deck. When Rawl comes in, he's got 4 loyalty, and we can immediately +2 him to get him up to 6 and scry 1. That's great. He does not really have an ultimate. Instead, we can -2 him, and when we next cast an instant or sorcery this turn, we copy it, and we can choose new targets for the copy, which is just Galvanic Iteration. So Rawl can come in and immediately set us up to copy the next spell we cast, and if he doesn't die before our next turn, that next turn, we can do it again, which will kill him, or we can just scry 1 and set him up for the following turn to copy something again. Rawl can do a lot for us. In addition, when we cast that instant or sorcery, we have cast an instant or sorcery, so we're going to do a damage to an opponent or a Planeswalker. If we've copied it, thanks to Rawl's ability, we've also copied an instant or sorcery, so he's going to do a damage. This just triggered ability can just go off over the course of the game and make Rawl really annoying to our opponents in a sort of, it's not the same thing as Gutter Snipe, but a kind of a Gutter Snipey type way, which is great because it makes Rawl annoying. So that means our opponents are likely to attack Rawl rather than us, or use removal on Rawl rather than one of our more powerful or more useful cards. So we get a lot of value out of him, including as a removal bait. Pretty good. Next we have Evasion of Arcavios. It's another weird card type. This is a battle, a siege. The way this works, if you haven't seen sieges before, is we cast this for 3 and double blue, and as it enters, we choose an opponent who will protect it. Everyone else at the table, including us, can attack it if they want, and they're attacking it the same way that they might attack a planeswalker that opponent that we've chosen to protect it controls. That protector can block the same way that they would be blocking when we attack one of their planeswalkers. And every damage we do to it, or anyone does to it really, reduces its defense value, defense counters, by 1. Once it's down to 0, it doesn't matter who has done that, it doesn't matter who's defeated it, because everyone other than the protecting player can attack it, but it's really just for us to attack. Once it's defeated, we exile it, because even though they protect it, we control it. We exile it, and we can cast its backside transformed without paying its mana cost because it doesn't have one. Because the cost you're paying is spending your attacks, reducing it, rather than spending mana on it. So that's how sieges work. It says, for, again, 3 and double blue, we get a siege with 7 defense counters that says when it enters, we get to search our library, graveyard, and or outside the game, which is not really a thing in Commander, for an instant or sorcery card we own, we reveal it, and we put it in our hand, and if we search our library this way, we shuffle. So this is technically a recursive effect in addition to a draw effect, but I just think of it as a draw effect. This tutors us up an instant or sorcery, whichever one we think we want the most. Hopefully we're casting Evasion of Arcavios, and then we've already got Zaffai and the Tempests out, so we find the coolest thing we can find. Maybe it's Surge to Victory. Maybe it's, just Into the Royal. Whatever we may need at that moment, Evasion of Arcavios can help us out finding it. And then once we defeat this battle, which again is not hard because we have a bunch of tokens, we have plenty of burn, because you can burn a battle for something that says deals X damage to any target, like Lightning Bolt, or just we've hit it with our tokens. We defeat it and it becomes Invasion of the Founders, which is an enchantment that says whenever we cast an instant or sorcery from our hand, so not all of our castings are from our hand, sometimes we're flashing something back or casting it from exile, but mostly we're casting things from our hand because that's what our commander wants us to do. Whenever we do that, we may copy that spell and we can choose new targets for the copy. So this is just Swarm Intelligence as long as we cast it from our hand, which is very, very strong. We do have to get to it by attacking on the battle, but we get a tutor from the start. So yeah, I think that this is a sweet battle that we don't normally run, but yeah, again, I don't typically put tutors in my deck that aren't for land, but this is just a fun effect, and you don't see battles that much, so yeah. Next up is the Mirari Conjecture, a saga. We've got all the hits of the weird card types and subtypes. This is 4 and a blue for a saga. If you haven't seen sagas before, the way this works is when it enters, and at the start of our first main phase, we put a lore counter on it, and we get a triggered ability based on the number of lore counters on it. So it first comes in, and we get the first chapter ability, which is we return an instant from our graveyard to our hand. We are running 10 instants in this deck, so it may be the case that we don't get value off of that first chapter, but that's okay. 10 instants is still 10%, that's fine. The second chapter, which again will trigger at the start of our next pre-combat main phase, says, or I guess our next turn's pre-combat main phase, our next turn's first main phase, there we go. We can do the same thing for a sorcery, put it back into our hand from the graveyard. Nice little bit of recursion for us. We can cast it, just like we could with the other one, right away from our hand, whether or not we do it for free with our commander. And then the final chapter is until end of turn, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, copy it, and you can choose new targets for the copy. So this is a great effect to use to like save up some spells in our hand if we have the mana to cast multiple spells in addition to hopefully casting a free spell with our commander, because it means every instant and sorcery we cast that turn, we get to copy. Pretty cool. Next we have Chandra, Hope's Beacon. This is from March of the Machine. It's 4 and double red for a 5 loyalty Chandra Planeswalker, obviously. It says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it rather. You may choose new targets for the copy, but this only triggers once each turn. So that will be the first one we cast. Because it's only going to trigger once, so it will trigger for the first one we cast. So we got to make sure that we sequence ourselves right that way. But it is a free copy every turn for our first instant or sorcery. It's pretty good. Chandra, we can +2 to add 2 mana in any combination of colors. This is great. The combination of colors bit is good. The fact that it's 2 mana feels a little bit like Chandra Torch of Defiance, but it's not just double red. This can really accelerate us into our commander, into one of our big spells if we want to cast a big spell in addition to by doing it free with our commander. Yeah, this can help us out in a lot of ways. We can also +1 Chandra to exile the top 5 cards of our library, and until the end of our next turn, we can cast an instant or sorcery from among those exiled cards. This is an effect that, again, I tried to avoid mostly if I could. I mean, these parts of Chandra are just very, very good, but this is a little bit annoying, because if we get, I don't know, Call the Skybreaker in those exiled cards, we've got to cast it for mana, because we can't cast it with our commander, because our commander can only cast spells for free, or give us a spell to cast for free from our hand. So this is essentially a draw 5, but in a way that we can't take advantage of our commander's ability with. However, we're able to do it until our next turn, and on our next turn, we can add mana with Chandra to help us cast those instants and sorceries. So yeah, draw 5, but we can only cast the instants and sorceries. You know, it's not perfect, but it's fine. And most of the time, we're going to be just adding mana with Chandra anyway. If we're hard up for spells to cast, though, we do have a nice option. That's pretty good. But we can also just -X Chandra, and she'll do X damage to each of up to 2 targets. That can be players. That can be creatures, planeswalkers. It could even be our Invasion of Arcavios. We can just -4 Chandra the moment she comes down, do 4 damage to the invasion, and if it's already taken 3 damage, that will flip it. We get to get a Swarm Intelligence right into play. Neat. We've already seen Surge to Victory. It can let us copy spells by exiling that card from our graveyard, and when our creatures do damage to our opponents, we're going to get to cast copies of the spell that we exiled. So yeah, it's not exactly the same, but giving us more bites at the apple is pretty nice. Finally, I've mentioned it a couple of times, it's actual Swarm Intelligence. 6 and a blue for an enchantment that says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may copy it, choose new targets if you want. So that's not even from your hand, it doesn't matter where it comes from, all that matters is that it's an instant and a sorcery. It can even be on someone else's turn. So yeah, 7 mana for an extremely powerful enchantment. 7 mana is a lot, but we're already paying that in several other ways, so we might as well do it here. And that covers our copying section and most of our game plan. We do have a bunch of portions of this deck that are meant to support that game plan and to supplement it. But first, a quick reminder. Do you want to like this video, perhaps? Maybe even subscribe to the channel? I mean, only if you want to. Either way, I'm appreciative of you being here. Thank you. Anyway, let's keep going, and let's talk about our support sections for our deck. We'll start with our card advantage section, which as usual I have tagged as draw. It doesn't mean all these cards actually draw us a card, but they give us access to more cards. So for example, Expressive Iteration. This is a blue and a red for a sorcery that says we look at the top 3 cards of our library, we put 1 in our hand, 1 on the bottom, and 1 into exile, and we can cast the exiled, or rather play the exiled card this turn. So if you weren't playing Magic when original Strixhaven was in Standard, and you're not familiar with Expressive Iteration, what you usually want to do with this is pay your mana, cast the spell, and when you look at your top 3, you find a land from among the 3 and have that be the card you put into exile. That way you can play it as your land drop this turn, assuming you haven't already made a land drop. So it can really mess you up if it's turn 2 and you Expressive Iteration and you see 3 lands, which means you're essentially just drawing a land because you're just putting 1 into your hand. But typically the way you look at this is you want to use this to find the land to help you make your land drop, if possible. And if not, you get to choose which card you want to put in your hand and either hang on to or cast, as part of the turn, and which other card you want to play from exile, whether it's a land or a spell that you can pay for. Notably, if that card is in exile and it's an instant or sorcery, we can't use Zaffai and the Tempests to play it or to cast it for free because it's not from our hand. So yeah, Expressive Iteration, a solid card advantage spell. It does have some restrictions on it, but still very powerful, and I believe got banned in Standard because of it. Next is Into the Royal. This is actually a removal spell. For 1 and a blue, we have an instant that returns target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. But it also has Kicker for 1 and a blue, and if it was kicked, we draw a card. So we can draw a card off of this, and I oftentimes, for this or Blink of an Eye or any of the functional reprints of this spell, I will usually only cast it when I either have to protect myself for 2, or I'll just wait until I can cast it for 4 because I want that card as well. So being able to cast this and copy it is pretty nice, because if we cast it kicked, its copy is also kicked, meaning we'll be bouncing 2 things and drawing 2 cards. But just bouncing any non-land permanent is pretty nice. Next we have Sonar Unfinished Genius. This is one of the new Lorwyn 5, if we want to call them that, or the new Strixhaven 5. They're not really either of those, but one of the new characters introduced in the recent Lorwyn Eclipse set, who's back at Strixhaven because they were on a field trip from Strixhaven. This is a Goblin Sorcerer, a 0/4 for a blue and a red, legendary of course, who enters Prepared. Prepared means this Prepare spell printed on him right here. While Sonar is prepared, we can cast a copy of that spell from exile, and doing so will unprepare Sonar. So we sort of have an extra card available to us, an extra spell in the form of this Wild Idea, which we'll talk about in a moment. Actually, we'll talk about it now, it's fine. Wild Idea is a sorcery for 3, a blue and a red, that says search your library for an instant or sorcery, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle. So tutor for an instant or sorcery. This is our other tutor card. Again, I don't like to run many of these, but Sonar is just flavorfully a good fit for this deck, and also mechanically a good fit. So yeah, Wild Idea, after we cast Sonar, we can cast Wild Idea, although not for free with our commander because it's not in our hand. It won't be in our hand because it isn't a real card, doesn't exist. But once we cast it, we can find the thing we might want most and cast that with our commander if we wish. But Sonar has another ability. We can tap him and make a treasure token, but only if we've cast an instant or sorcery this turn. So in a way, Sonar is every turn you cast an instant or sorcery, tap down your 0/4 and get a treasure. So he's a pretty good blocker. But if we don't think we're going to need him to block over the course of the next turn cycle, during our turn, when we cast our instant or sorcery, we just tap him to make a treasure and get a little bit of repeatable acceleration for us. Yeah. Or, of course, we can do this on an opponent's turn if we've cast an instant on that turn, or I guess a sorcery with flash if we can find a way to do that. Yeah, and so good either way. Next up, we have Leitmotif Composer. This is from the Strixhaven Secrets of Strixhaven Commander deck. Good grief. 2 and a blue for a 2/2 human bard, who looks rad, by the way. This is a sweet look. That says, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Seems great, especially because it has the ability, pay 2 and a blue, creatures named Leitmotif Composer can't be blocked this turn. For 2 and a blue, we guarantee damage and card draw. That's pretty good. But it also says whenever we cast an instant or sorcery with mana value 5 or greater, we make a token that's a copy of this creature, which is why it doesn't say this creature can't be blocked this turn. It says creatures with this name can't be blocked this turn. So if we cast one of these big spells, we get a free Leitmotif Composer. Whenever any of them attack, we just activate any one of them, and they're all going to draw us a card when they do damage, and they'll all do damage. All of that is great, because this doesn't say you have to spend 5 or more mana on that spell. It just has to have mana value 5 or greater. And if I remember correctly, we have quite a few spells that are that. In fact, let's take a look at our mana curve and see exactly how many we have. So, mana value 5 or greater, we've got spells here, 6, 11, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. 21 different spells in our deck that Leitmotif Conductor will that will cause Leitmotif Conductor to make a copy of itself. It's even better because it doesn't say when you cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value 5 or greater, if this creature isn't a token, create a token. So anyone who's seen Scoot Swarm go off, this is not the same thing. But it feels pretty good. Like the token copy we make the first time we do this is also going to make a copy of itself the second time we do this, along with the first one. So this can get out of hand a little bit as our composition grows, and we can draw a bunch of cards, make them all unblockable. Yeah, seems great. Next we have Una's Grace. This is a weird card to include in this deck, but trust me. For 2 and a blue, we have an instant that says target player draws a card, and it has Retrace, so we can cast it from our graveyard by discarding a land in addition to paying its other type costs. Una's Grace is 3 mana, and it draws a card, and that's all it does. It's just at instant speed. Great. But we can cast it from our graveyard in an unlimited way simply by paying its mana and drawing and discarding a land. Una's Grace is a card for 3 mana that draws us a card and then essentially says all of your lands have cycling for 3. Which means, now it is a spell every time we're doing it rather than activating a cycling cost, so it could be countered, which would just put it in the graveyard and we can just keep doing it. Una's Grace is in this deck because there's so many ways for us to draw a bunch of cards, and then if we end up in a situation where we just have a lot of lands in hand and not a lot of action, Una's Grace lets us turn those lands into gas. So yeah, plenty of lands in this deck, and a lot of ramp, so we're not desperate to rely on every land we have, so Una's Grace can help us with that. This is a weird include, like I said, but I have found that it works very well for us, so yeah, go for it. Next we have Seize the Spoils. I love all of these effects, which is great because they're all in this deck. This is 2 and a red for a sorcery that says, as an additional cost, discard a card. So another way to get cards in our graveyard that we can recur. And Seize the Spoils lets us draw 2 cards and make a treasure. So what this is Tormenting Voice that costs 1 more and refunds us for the 1 more with a treasure, because Tormenting Voice is 1 and a red, as an additional cost, discard a card, draw 2. So we're getting some cards in hand, we're getting cards into the graveyard like we might need them to be, and we're getting a treasure, which is us banking mana for later. A very cool effect. We're going to see several more effects like this soon. And of course, they reprinted this in Foundation, so it's easy to find, but I'm always going to like the Jesper Aisling call time printing, but most of all, it's really sweet. Next up, we have Tablet of Discovery. This is a cool card. This is an uncommon from the Secrets of Strixhaven main set. For 2 and a red, we get an artifact that says when it enters, we mill a card, and we can play that card this turn. So it doesn't say cast, it's just play. So if we mill a land, we can play it as our land drop. This is a sweet card. It just, like, put a card in your graveyard, but you can play it this turn, which is essentially draw a card, and if you don't play it this turn, put it in your graveyard. Essentially works that way. So this is a card advantage effect that becomes a self-mill effect that we can use later. And that is on top of the fact that this is a manalith, essentially. It's 3 mana for an artifact that taps for 1 mana. It doesn't tap for 1 mana of any color, it makes only red, but we're slightly more red than we are blue, so that seems good. And we can tap it for double red if we want to use its mana only to cast instants and sorceries. So this can be very powerful for us, and every turn we don't need double red, we're just tapping it for a 1 red, and that's great. After we've already gotten some card advantage from it or some graveyard filling. Pretty good. Next we have Big Score. Big Score is 3 and a red for an instant that says, as an additional cost, discard a card, then draw 2 cards and make 2 treasures. It's the same thing as Seize the Spoils, but it costs 1 more and makes 1 more treasure, and it's an instant. So Big Score is part of a series of spells. This is the best of the series that are all 4 mana red spells that require us to discard a card, then draw us 2 and make 2 treasures. Big Score is the instant for 1 and a red. Unexpected Windfall is exactly the same as Big Score, but instead of 1 and a red, it's 2 and double red, but still instant speed, discard a card, make 2 treasures, draw 2 cards. Pretty good. There is one more version of this, which we are not running in this deck, which is Pirate's Pillage. Pirate's Pillage is the same as Big Score, but at sorcery speed, and I figured we should do these at instant speed. Seems more powerful. So yeah. Creative Technique, we've already noticed. Creative Technique lets us shuffle and reveal cards from the top until we get to a non-land, and we can cast it for free. Or cast it for free. So that's giving us card advantage. Fiery Encore, we've also already seen. It has us discard a card and then draw a card. So we end up with the same number of cards in hand, but we end up with a new card, and we're not casting this unless we want to discard a card, particularly a non-land, in order to do damage to something. So what it's doing is it's turning one of our other cards into a removal spell and then drawing us a card. Pretty good. Invasion of Arcavios is a tutor that puts a card in our hand. Mystic Confluence can let us draw cards just straight up. Tella Great Sage. This is from the Final Fantasy set. 3, a blue and a red, for a 3/3 legendary human wizard, a Great Sage, that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, make a 1/1 colorless hero creature token. So sort of like a Young Pyromancer effect, but any non-creature. And we've got 4 enchantments, 7 artifacts rather, 22 instants and sorceries, a battle, and 2 planeswalkers. So 40 some odd different spells that will trigger Tella and make us a 1/1 hero. And if 4 or more mana was spent to cast that spell, we draw 2 cards. Great, that's pretty sweet. And if 8 or more mana was spent to cast that spell, we sacrifice Tella and deal an amount of damage equal to the mana value of the spell we cast to each opponent. So Tella, I don't know Final Fantasy, so I don't know this person's lore, but it's nice to be able to say hey, we're gonna keep making heroes and we're gonna draw cards quite often. And then eventually, we're not gonna have to wait very long with our commander letting us cast spells for free, so that we have plenty of mana left over to cast even more spells. We're going to have Tella overloaded and just blow him up, and it's going to hurt each of our opponents. Notably, Tella's going to trigger and make this hero anytime we cast any non-creature spell. Drawing cards and having him explode are both based on how much mana we spend to cast the spells. So these parts of the trigger are not going to be affected, or are not going to come up when we're casting things for free with our commander, just to know. We've seen Abstract Performance. It's going to let us cast a card for free, hopefully, and then put 3 other cards in our hand and 4 other cards in our graveyard. Chandra lets us +1 her, and we can exile the top 5 and cast instants and sorceries from among them until the end of our next turn. Inspiring Refrain draws us 2 cards every 3 turns. Season of Weaving, every paw we choose, or each of our paws we can choose for each of our paws to just draw us a card. Sunbird's Invocation is next. Really great card for any Spellslinger deck, but just lots of decks love this card because it's just so cool. This is 5 and a red for an enchantment that says whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is that spell's mana value, and you can cast a spell with mana value X or less from among the cards revealed this way without paying its mana cost, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So every time we cast a spell from our hand, basically every time we cast a spell at all, we get to look at the top few cards of our library, or top many cards, and it does not require us to have spent mana on that spell in order to do this, or to cast a spell for free. So we can really just keep doing this over and over. Now it doesn't chain, because the spell we're not casting from our hand. The spell we're casting with Sunbird's Invocation, that is, we're not casting from our hand. So yeah, but just imagine getting a free extra spell every time you cast a spell. That's great. We've seen Will of the Teamer. We can draw cards equal to the greatest mana value among permanents we control, or we can make someone else do it. It says target player, I suppose. Hit the Mother Lode lets us discover into something. We're going to get to cast a spell or put it in our hand, plus make a bunch of tapped treasures, hopefully. And Dig Through Time lets us look at the top 7 and put 2 in our hand, and Treasure Cruise draws us 3. So that covers our card advantage section. Next is Acceleration, which again, just shorthanded as Ramp. We're starting off with Sol Ring, of course. Sol Ring is a mana rock. It's a single generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless. We've got a deck full of big, expensive spells. Put this in your deck. It's one of the best acceleration pieces you can run. Strike It Rich is next. This is a sorcery that costs a single red that just makes a treasure. That's all it does. Just say, spend a red to bank that red as any color for later. And we can flash this back for 2 and a red. So cool. Probably we're not going to use Zaffai and the Tempests to cast this for free, but it's a nice early acceleration piece that puts a spell in our graveyard we can cast later. And even though when we cast it later, we're just getting a treasure from it, we are still triggering any of our Magecraft or other, like, you know, when you cast a non-token or a non-creature spell effects. Yeah, pretty good. Wayfarer's Bauble is next. This is a single generic mana for an artifact that if we pay to, tap, and sack it, we Rampant Growth. We search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. I like running Wayfarer's Bauble a lot. It's generic mana Rampant Growth for a single extra mana that you don't have to spend on the same turn. If we're not playing green, we should probably run this card. It's just very strong for the effect. It's not fast, this acceleration, but in any color, why not? We're running Arcane Signet, of course. It's 2 generic mana for an untapped mana rock that makes 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So in this deck, blue or red. An untapped rock that makes both of our colors, of course we're going to run it. Ashling Rekindled is next. This is such a sweet card. So sweet, in fact, that during the Lorwyn Eclipse Standard, or Lorwyn Eclipse like being the most recent set in Standard, I built a commander deck for her. So check out the video's description if you want to see a link to that deck. So Ashling Rekindled is a 1/3 legendary elemental sorcerer, notably a sorcerer, just like Zaffai, for 1 and a red. It says, whenever this creature enters or transforms into Ashling Rekindled, so enters or transforms into this face, we can discard a card, and if we do, we draw a card. So yeah, a little bit of graveyard filling, a little bit of card draw. I know it's not really card advantage because we're not like ending up card positive that way, but we care about putting certain cards in our graveyard so we can take advantage of it that way. And Ashling says at the beginning of our first main phase, we can pay a blue. And when we do, we transform Ashling into Ashling Rhymebound, another legendary elemental wizard who's a 1/3 that says whenever this creature transforms into Ashling Rhymebound and at the beginning of our first main phase, we add 2 mana of any 1 color and we spend this mana only to cast spells with mana value 4 or greater. So Ashling on this side, which is the side we want, is able to make us mana the very first turn it transforms into it, because Ashling will come in, we can discard and draw if we want. Beginning of our next first main phase, we can pay a blue, Ashling flips, and we make 2 mana. So we get refunded for that blue, plus we get 1 more, and we can use those, we can't use that one we get refunded, quote unquote, in the same way, but it's fine. We've got lots of spells that are mana value 4 or greater, a whole lot of them. So Ashling can really help us out with our big spells and casting them. In addition, Ashling Rhymebound, at the beginning of our first main phase, if we pay a red, we can transform Ashling back to Ashling Rekindled, which again lets us discard and draw. So we can sort of keep Ashling on whichever side we really want. Usually, if we've got plenty of card advantage, we're going to keep Ashling on the blue side because we want to be able to have access to more mana. But yeah, either way. Next up we have Is It Signet. This is another 2 mana rock. It's an artifact that if we pay 1 and tap it, we make a blue and a red. So we do have to pay mana into this to activate it, but it does filter into both of our colors, so it fixes our mana, and that's great. We've seen Sonar. Sonar is in this section because if we cast an instant or sorcery on our turn, we can, whenever we cast an instant or sorcery and Sonar does not have Summoning Sickness, we can tap him and make a treasure. Pretty good. Talisman of Creativity is next. This is 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps for colorless, or it can tap for blue or red if we're willing to let it do a damage to us, which, as I often like to say, we always are. Because if we need colored mana, then what does it mean to need to use this for colored mana? It means that without tapping this for colored mana, we wouldn't be able to cast whatever spell we're trying to cast. So imagine if that spell said, or imagine if you're in a situation and someone said, hey, do you, if you're in a situation, good grief. Imagine if you're playing Magic, that's the situation you're in. And someone said to you, hey, would you be willing to spend 1 life in order to play an extra spell every turn? Of course you would. Like, that's what an incredible rate. So that's essentially what Talisman of Creativity says. Like, we're not just getting the spell for free, obviously, but if we need to make colored mana in order to cast a spell, it's worth paying the extra life in the form of that damage. And if we don't need colored mana, well, we just tap it for colorless mana. Problem solved. Yeah, great either way. Next up, we've seen a lot of these. Seize Spoils, Unexpected Windfall, Tablet of Discovery, Baral's Expertise, Rousing Refrain, Big Score. We've seen all of these. Chandra makes Mana Force as well. We've even seen Brass's Bounty and Hit the Motherlode. We've seen all of the rest of these except for Stormkiln Artist. This is 3 and a red for a 2/2 Dwarf Shaman that gets +1/+0 for each artifact we control. We've got some artifacts in this deck. We're running, 7 of them. And we've got some things that make treasure, but why is that so helpful? Well, because it has Magecraft. Whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery, we make a treasure. So Stormkiln Artist can absolutely go off in this deck. Even if we're only making 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 treasures a turn, all of those add to its power, making it a good blocker and sometimes a good attacker. And it gives us an increasing amount of treasure we can use right away because those treasures don't come in tapped. Great. And since we've seen the rest of these, that covers our acceleration section. We have 1 card in our discount section. If I can spell discount. There we go. I don't like to run cards in my deck that are cost reducers, unless those cost reducers can reduce the cost of at least 40 spells. As we've seen, there are only 16 creatures in this deck, and with 38 lands, what's that? 54 cards? So there's 46 non-creature spells in this deck. Well, Longshot Rebel Bowman is a 3/3 legendary human rebel ally from Avatar the Last Airbender for 3 and a red. It has reach, because Longshot is a great archer, and it gives all of our non-creature spells a reduction of 1 generic mana. So while we do have several spells in this deck that don't have a generic mana component to their casting cost, this is plenty to justify putting Longshot in as a cost reducer. And that cost reduction can really add up because we are built to make a lot of mana and to therefore cast big spells with a tiny little bit of a reduction. Sometimes it can be the difference between casting 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 spells in a turn. And whenever we cast a non-creature spell, Longshot deals 2 damage to each opponent. So this is not just instants and sorceries, it's every non-creature spell. When we cast a battle or an enchantment or an artifact, or one of our planeswalkers, whatever it may be, Longshot is going to have a Gutter Snipe trigger that's even better than the actual Gutter Snipe. So yeah, great. That's our discount section, so to speak. I want to remind you, there is a considering section at the bottom of the Moxfield page. It does have some other discount cards in it, or cards that will offer these kinds of cost reductions. But next is our interaction section. Again, just tagged as removal. We're running a red deck, so we're playing Lightning Bolt, because Lightning Bolt is a terrific card. 1 red for an instant that does 3 damage to any target. Of course, it hits planeswalkers, creatures, it hits our own battle, it goes face. It's amazing. And we could definitely pay less than $3.50 for it, but it's this beautiful Strixhaven Mystical Archive card, and it's a Strixhaven deck. I know what I said earlier about the other one, but just saying, yeah. Want to treat ourselves just a little bit. Next up, we have Rapid Hybridization. This is a type of card I don't typically run in blue, but it's an instant, and we want instants and sorceries in this deck. So this is 1 blue mana for an instant that destroys a creature. That creature can't be regenerated, and the creature's controller makes a 3/3 green Frog Lizard creature token. That's cool. Frog Lizard? Seems fun. Yeah. Get rid of the thing that's most dangerous or most effective for your opponents, or just their commander to slow them down, and give them a Frog Lizard. Sounds good. We've seen Into the Royal, bounces an on-land permanent. Imprisoned in the Moon is 2 and a blue for an aura that enchants a creature, land, or planeswalker and makes that permanent into a colorless land that taps for colorless mana and causes it to lose all other card types and abilities. Which means this is a terrific lockdown piece. It does accelerate our opponent a little bit, gives them another land, but it only makes colorless mana. And this is a great way to say, oh, you've got a huge, valuable creature that's doing a lot of work, like a Hullbreaker Horror? No, now you have a land. Oh, you've got a massive trampler, like Galta? No, you have a land. Oftentimes, I use Imprisoned in the Moon to shut down someone's commander, if you're playing at a table that doesn't just frown upon that. So, what's great about it is, it means that if they can't stop you from resolving Imprisoned in the Moon, and they don't have a way to interact with their own lands, then they need to find either something that can deal with enchantments, or something that can deal with any non-land permanent. Like bouncing it, or, removing it, obviously, exiling it, destroying it, anything along those lines. Otherwise, their commander is just sort of locked down, and if they've built their deck so that their deck only functions with their commander, which is a little bit more of a build around your commander than I ever do, then yeah, you've shut them down pretty hard, and that can be good. Again, if you're in a pod that frowns on that, I would only use this on cards that aren't going to completely shut down your opponent's deck, or if you're shutting it down by shutting down their commander, do so to an opponent that's already ahead to sort of find parity. We've seen Brawl's expertise, bounces 3 artifacts and or creatures, in addition to giving us a free spell if we wish from our hand. Fiery Encore can do direct damage to an opponent's creature when we discard a card as part of its resolution. Mystic Confluence can both protect us and by countering spells and bounce creatures. Chandra, we can minus her to do damage to up to 2 targets. Hunted by the Family can remove things in the form of humbling them by making them 1/1 humans with no abilities, if our opponents don't want to give us a copy of them. And Explosive Singularity just does a straight up 10 damage to any target, which can kill maybe not everything, but quite a few things. And that is our interaction section. We have 2 Wraths in the deck. We've seen both of them. Season of Weaving lets us bounce each non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand, and we can do the trick with it and keep Zaffai or a copy of Zaffai in play if we wish. And Volcanic Vision, of course, does damage equal to the mana value of the instant or sorcery that this regrows for us to each opponent's creatures, to each creature each of our opponents controls. So yeah, pretty solid Wraths for our deck, I think. Expensive, but solid. So that covers our support sections. We're going to go over the sections that supplement our game plan and sort of round out our tags so that we know what we're doing with our cards. We're going to start off with our Payoffs. These are cards that reward us for doing what we were going to do anyway. So Sonar cares about us casting instants and sorceries on our turn, or at all rather, because on a turn that we have, we can tap Sonar to make a treasure. Third Path Iconoclast is one of our many cards, or several cards at least, that makes tokens for us. A blue and a red for a 2/1 human monk that whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we make a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token. It is an artifact, so that can be relevant for things like our Stormkiln Artist, which gets bigger for every artifact we have. It's worth noting. We are running actual Gutter Snipe as well. This is 2 and a red for a 2/2 Goblin Shaman that does 2 damage to each opponent whenever we cast an instant or sorcery. Great. This can absolutely add up, and not usually is it like a killer, although it sure can kill people sometimes, but it is annoying enough that opponents might come after it, and therefore it's removal bait. Leitmotif Conductor gives us a copy of itself whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, mana value 5 or greater. Similarly, Prismari Pianist is 1 and double red for a 2/1 Djinn Bard that says whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we make a 1/1 blue and red elemental creature token. So kind of like the Iconoclast. But this triggers on non-creature spells and makes a 1/1 artifact creature. This triggers only on instants and sorceries and makes a 1/1 non-artifact creature. So why is this as good? Well, if the spell's mana value is 5 or greater, we make 3 of those tokens instead. Think about casting a spell for free that's huge and has a huge effect from our commander, plus it gives us 3 little friendly 1/1s. Why not? We've already seen Rawl. Rawl has Magecraft essentially, and pings an opponent or planeswalker every time we cast or copy an instant or sorcery. We're also running Rutha Mastering the Moment. This is the new Rutha card who is in charge of the Prismari precon for Secrets of Strixhaven Commander. This is 2, a blue and a red, for a 3/4 legendary orc sorcerer that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you've cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, you make an XX blue and red elemental creature token with flying and haste, where X is the greatest mana value among instant and sorcery spells you cast this turn. So this Rutha rewards us with a flying, hasty attacker that probably has a pretty solid power and toughness based on the size of the instant sorceries we're casting. Even if we cast multiple ones, we only get 1 creature, but we're always going to get a creature that's as big as our biggest spell. So Rutha does encourage us to cast things with Zaffai and the Tempests before combat, which is fine. We usually want to do that anyway. It's just worth remembering that in your sequencing so you can get the best trigger off of Rutha that you can. We've seen Stormkiln Artist. It has Magecraft. Whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery, we make a treasure. We have also Talrand, Sky Summoner. 2 and double blue for a 2/2 legendary Merfolk wizard that makes us a 2/2 flying Drake creature token whenever we cast an instant or sorcery. So more of these tokens that we're rewarded with every time we cast our non-permanent spells. Dika Fractal Theorist is another one. 4 and a blue for a 3/3 legendary human wizard with Magecraft. Whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery, we make a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, and we put a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to that spell's mana value. So Dika sort of has a similar effect to the Rutha we just saw, in the sense that Dika makes us an XX, essentially, where X is the mana value of the spell, even though it's in the form of counters. Dika triggers on every instant or sorcery we cast, not just triggers at the start of combat based on our biggest instant or sorcery, but Rutha's tokens have flying and haste, so both are pretty good. In addition, Dika can be activated for 3 and a blue to make one of our creature tokens unblockable this turn. We have a lot of tokens that we want to attack with, and notably, the Leitmotif Composer copies are tokens. So we can use Dika if we don't want to use the Leitmotif Conductor's ability itself, which we generally will, since it's cheaper. But yeah, if we have a need to do that, or if we have other tokens we want to make unblockable, like these drakes or these flying things that Rutha makes, the flying elementals, either way it works. Dika is Dika's on loan from Quandrix here to help us out with fractals. But yeah, we still welcome her. Next we have Docent of Perfection. This is 3 and double blue for a 5/4 flying insect horror. That's not the Docent, that's the Docent. Gross. It says whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, we make a 1/1 blue human wizard creature token. Now notably, if we then control 3 or more wizards, we transform this creature. I want to call it out. We don't have many wizards in this deck. We've got 4 of them, but like Talrand's a wizard, Tella's a wizard, but this Stormkiln artist is a shaman. This pianist is a bard. Sanar and our commander are both sorcerers. The only wizards we have even in this section are Talrand, Dika, and Tella. So it's not all that likely we're going to flip this immediately, but we might flip it earlier than we think, especially since we're casting a bunch of instants and sorceries. And when we flip it, it becomes Final Iteration, a 6/5 flying Eldrazi insect that gives all of our wizards +2/+1 and flying, meaning every wizard token we've made becomes a Delver of Secrets that's flipped, a 3/2 flyer. And Final Iteration says whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we make a 1/1 blue human wizard creature token. This effect is the same as this effect, it just doesn't have the ability to flip it back. So it becomes a bigger flyer, it gets +1/+1 essentially, makes all of our wizards into 3/2 flyers, the wizards that are 1/1s, and all of our other wizards, like Tella, for example, would become a 5/4 flyer. Pretty cool. Speaking of Tella, triggers whenever we cast non-creature spells, and maybe gives us more if we spent 4 or 8 more mana on it. 4 and or 8 mana. Sunbird's Invocation carries about every time we cast spells from our hand. We love that. We haven't seen Okiva yet. Okiva is 5, a blue, and a red for a 6/6 legendary Phyrexian Nightmare with flying and ward, pay 3 mana, and pay 3 life. This is originally from Phyrexia All Will Be One, but it's reprinted in Foundations, so neat. Why? It's huge, and it makes a unique token, but it does, so yeah. It says whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we make a number of 1/1 red Phyrexian Goblin creature tokens equal to the mana value of that non-creature spell, and they gain haste until the end of turn. So this is our sort of big token maker. If we're casting, Strike It Rich, then we're just going to get our 1 treasure and our 1 Phyrexian Goblin, but it gets haste, that's fine. If we cast Hit the Motherlode, we're going to get 10 goblins, and they all have haste. And remember, we could be doing that for free, and Okiva does, or Ovika, I'm sorry, it's Ovika. I always read it as Okiva. Ovika does not care how much we spent on it. It just cares about the mana value of the spell. Nice. Plus a 6/6 flyer that's hard to remove. Yeah, sounds good. And finally, Swarm Intelligence lets us copy any of our instants and sorcery spells when we cast them. Great. So that is our payoff section. Let's go to our synergy section now. These are cards that do some counting and care about some of the things that we're doing in that way. So like Leitmotif Conductor and Prismari Pianist both care about us casting instants and sorcery spells that happen to have mana value 5 or greater. Docent to Perfection cares about the number of humans we have, and Fury Gale Flocking cares about the number of instants and sorceries we have in our graveyard, as well as, I suppose, the number of opponents that we have. That covers our synergy section. Let's take a look now at our burn section. These are all cards that can do direct damage to our opponents. So obviously, Lightning Bolt can hit any target. We love it. Same is true of Explosive Singularity, any target. Same is true of Chandra Hope's Beacon. When we minus X her, we can do X damage to each of up to 2 targets. Doesn't say it is restricted by that target, so yeah. Gutter Snipe triggers on us casting instants and sorceries, and Longshot triggers on us casting non-creature spells, but they both do 2 damage to each opponent. Rawl, whenever we do our Magecraft trigger with him, does 1 damage to an opponent or a Planeswalker. Prisoner's Dilemma is gonna make someone lose some life. It might be one person taking a lot, it might be everyone taking the same amount, but it's gonna be fun every time we cast it. And Tella, when we cast a non-creature spell of mana that we spent 8 or more mana on, Tella explodes and does that much damage to each opponent. So that is our burn section. Let's go now to our recursion section. These are all cards that can either bring themselves or other cards back from our graveyard. Galvanic Iteration and Increasing Vengeance both have flashback, pretty good for us. Una's Grace and Call the Skybreaker both have retrace, so we can cast them again from our graveyard by, as an additional cost, discarding a land. The Mirari Conjecture on chapters 1 and 2 bring back respectively an instant and a sorcery from our graveyard. Volcanic Vision can bring back either an instant or sorcery and do its mana value in damage to each creature we don't control. And Wisdom of the Ages brings back all of our instants and sorceries to our hand and gives us no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. That is our recursion section. Let's talk about our graveyard section now. These are all cards that put cards in our graveyard that we could probably recur, or that work with those cards we've talked about a couple of times that care about how many cards of whatever type we have in the graveyard. Or like, our Delve cards. So, Ashling Rekindled lets us discard and draw whenever she enters or transforms into Ashling Rekindled. Seize the Spoils, Big Score, and Unexpected Windfall all have an additional cost of us discarding a card. Tablet of Discovery enters and we mill a card that we are able to play this turn, but if we don't play it this turn, it stays in our graveyard. Fiery Encore has us discard and draw. And Abstract Performance puts 4 of the cards that it exiles into our graveyard from whichever pile our opponent chooses. So that covers our graveyard section. Let's talk now about our small protection section. We've seen Mystic Confluence, which can protect us because counter spells can be protective, but we also have the Swiftfoot Boots. This is 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives the equipped creature hexproof and haste. Haste can be great for some of our creatures, like the Call the Skybreaker Elementals, the 5/5 flyers. That seems really good. Or if we have an even bigger flyer that Rutha makes, it already has haste, so it doesn't need the boots, but, maybe it wants some sweet footwear. Generally, though, we have the Swifties here for the hexproof. We want to be able to get out Zaffai and the Tempests and and protect them, because that's a large mana investment to try and get them out again. So yeah, the Swifties are here to protect our commander and whatever else we need to protect. That covers protection. Let's talk about evasion now. We only have a little bit of it. It's just in the form of Dika making our creature tokens unblockable if we wish, and Docent of Perfection giving our wizards flying. Again, we have that considering section that does have other ways of making things evasive, but yeah, this is just tagged here, so if you use that section, you'll be able to see how these interact with this. And finally, we have a section that shows off all the tokens we make. It's notable because we're running 16 creatures, but all of these spells, creature or otherwise, can make more creatures for us. So these are all creature tokens in this section. So it's a total of 30 different cards or 30 different ways of having creatures, I should say. So Third Path Iconoclast makes us a 1/1 soldier when we cast a non-creature spell. Leitmotif Composer lets us make copies of it. Prismari Pianist makes 1/1s when we cast instants and sorceries. Rutha makes us only 1 creature at the start of combat on our turn, but it can be quite big and it can fly and have haste. Talrand makes 2/2 flyers. Dika makes 0/0s with X counters on them, so XXs when we cast instants and sorceries. Docent of Perfection makes us these 1/1 humans, which can become Delvers of Secrets. Tella makes us 1/1 heroes. Season of Weaving can make us a token copy of an artifact or creature we control. Will of the Teamer makes a token that's a copy of any permanent, but it's also a 4/4 dragon with flying. Call the Skybreaker makes us those 5/5 flying elementals. Hunted by the Family can make us copies of creatures that opponents control. Ovika makes us these 1/1 Phyrexian Goblins, which, when we make them, they have haste until end of turn. And Fury Gale Flocking gives us 2 3/3 flying elementals for each opponent once it resolves. And that covers all of the spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our basic lands. We're running quite a few. We've got these Secrets of Strixhaven basics, which look great. If I do say so myself, I did not make them, obviously. I don't know why I'm saying it that way. But yeah, we're a little bit heavier on red than we are on blue, but it works out with this balance just fine. We do have one more blue source, or like specifically blue island, we'll get to soon. We are running Coastal Peak. It's the new Is It Colored bicycle land. This is an island and mountain, so it's got both types, and it comes in tapped, but because it has both types, it taps for blue and red. It also has cycling for 2 generic mana, meaning while it's in our hand, we can pay 2 and discard it to draw a card. Something we might do if we're desperate for a new card in hand, or if it's just late game and we draw this and we just need something else, we can take some of our great swaths of mana and cycle this away to find something better. If you want to upgrade the bicycle land, Coastal Peak, I would go for Steam Vents. It's the shock land. It costs a lot more, but you know, it's also a dual typed land, and even though it can't cycle, it could come in untapped. So yeah. Sulphur Falls is a check land. This is a land that taps for blue or red and comes in tapped unless we control an island or a mountain, which is not just our 23 basics, but Coastal Peak is both an island and a mountain. So in this deck, we have 26 lands that have basic types of island or mountain. So that's a very high chance that Sulphur Falls is going to come in untapped. If we're not just playing it tapped as our opening, like our first turn, and passing without playing a 1-drop. Either way is totally fine. If you want to upgrade this, you know, there's plenty of expensive like dual type lands out there, or lands that are more likely to be tap lands, but for 32 cents, I think this is a solid investment in this deck, and it's very unlikely to be an untapped duel. So yeah. Next up, we are running both of our filter lands in our colors. So Ferris Lake is a land that if we pay 1 and tap it, it makes a blue and a red. So it's the same as our Is It Signet, just on a land. Nice way to filter into our colors. We also have Cascade Bluffs, which is a land that taps for colorless, but if we pay a blue or red into it, it can produce double blue, double red, or a blue and a red. So pretty nice that it can tap on its own, whereas Ferris Lake cannot, and that it can make whatever colors we may happen to need. But it is worth noting, if we don't happen to have available colored mana to put into it, it can't produce colored mana. So if we only have, you know, a Soul Ring still available for us to tap, then this is only going to tap for colorless mana because we can't put blue or red into it. Whereas the Ferris Lake, we can put anything into it and it will turn it into colored mana. So both of these filter lands have a place in our deck. We've got 4 fixing lands. These are sort of the typical ones that are in most of my decks. Of course, we're running Command Tower. It's a land that comes in untapped and taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, which is just the text on Arcane Signet. So this is an untapped blue and red source. It's an untapped duel. Yeah, of course we're going to run that. Just like we're going to run Path of Ancestry, which has the same text as it, but comes in tapped. A tapped duel is fine, especially when it's one that says when we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry 1. That means if we use this to cast Zaffai and the Tempests, we get a scry, because of course our commander shares types with itself. And we also have 9 other creatures in this deck that are humans, bards, and or sorcerers. So 10 of our cards in this deck get scries off a Path of Ancestry. That sounds good. We're running Myriad Landscape. This is a tap land that taps for colorless, and we can also pay 2, tap, and sack it to search our library for up to 2 basic land cards that share a land type, meaning 2 basic islands or 2 basic mountains, then put them on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. So while it comes in tapped, we have to pay for it, and the lands it finds come in tapped. It is 1 land drop that turns into 2 lands in play, so it is slow acceleration in our land base, if you'll pardon the oxymoron. And I think it's totally fine for the kind of decks that we build for this channel. Similarly, Temple of the False God. I know not everyone likes it, but this is an untapped land that taps for 2 colorless mana, like Soul Ring. It's a soul land. We're just not able to tap it at all unless we have at least 4 other lands, so 5 or more including itself. So this is acceleration that doesn't work for us early game, but in a deck that has a bunch of big spells and a big expensive commander, a land that taps for 2 mana, that if it's our 5th land drop, it jumps us from 4 mana to 6. Like, this is welcome in our deck all day long. Just maybe not the first couple of turns. We're running Shivan Reef. This is a pain land. It is the same text as our Talisman of Curiosity. So everything I said about the Talisman is true here too. We're going to tap it for colorless all day long unless we need the colored mana, and when we do, it's totally worth the damage. If you want to upgrade this, I don't know that there's an upgrade for pain lands. I think they're an excellent budget choice for an untapped duel, but I suppose you could, if you upgrade this to a shock land when you're not doing it with some other land, or maybe side grade it to Riverglide Pathway. I really like the pathways. They're untapped modal double-faced lands, so it's Riverglide or Lava Glide, I think, pathway, so it's either an untapped blue source or red source, but you can't change it, so it's not really a duel, so that's side grade, and it also costs several dollars, whereas this is like 30 cents. We're running Frostboil Snarl, which is a land that taps for blue or red, and as it enters, we may reveal an island or mountain from our hand, and if we don't, it comes in tapped. Which is fine, because 26 of our cards in our deck are either islands or mountains or both. So Frostboil Snarl coming in tapped is not a big deal as a tapped duel, but it's pretty likely to be able to come in untapped a lot of the time. So yeah, totally okay. If you want to upgrade a reveal land like this, I usually suggest one of the Verges. For this one, it would be Riverpire Verge. But of course, the Verges are relatively new and getting played a lot in Standard, so they're quite expensive. Temple of Epiphany is next. This is a scry land, comes in tapped, makes blue or red. When it enters, we scry one. Sure, just a free scry, a little bit of selection, nothing wrong with that for 15 cents, reprinted in Foundations and in so many other places. I like the Temples. If you want to upgrade it to the Surveil land alternative, Thundering Falls, that's fine. A lot more mana, or a lot more money, but yeah, it's okay. And then, the reason I didn't have a real upgrade path for our check land earlier is because the slow lands are back. As of Secrets of Strixhaven, the main set, which means hopefully their prices are going to continue to go down. This is already $2, which is more than I'd like for, just one of our lands, but it's solid. Stormcarved Coast is a land that taps for blue or red and enters tapped unless we control 2 or more other lands. So it doesn't matter what kind of lands they are, any type, this can come in untapped. So that's why it's called a slow land, because it comes in tapped as your first or second land and then untapped for the rest of the time. So yeah, I think a great way to round out our sort of check land cycle, if you want to think of it that way, of the slow land, the slow land, the reveal land, and the actual check land. So we are running the new Tango land as well, the Scorched Geyser. Again, its price has not gone down as much as I thought it would. It hasn't gone down as much as the new Bicycle land, but hopefully they will be reprinting this more and it will go down. So this is an Island Mountain, again, and it enters tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands, whereas the slow land only cares about 2 or more lands at all. The Geyser cares about basics, but we've got a lot of those in this deck, 23 of them, and this has dual. This is a typed duel. So yeah, helpful for our other cards. Finally, we've got 2 cards in our utility section. Demolition Field, I usually put in my decks because the decks that I build for this channel are of a power level that is for pods that, I don't know, the pods that like these kinds of decks typically don't like mana denial. They don't want land destruction at all. But you do have to have an answer to a problematic non-basic. Whether or not you're playing with your usual pod or not, sometimes someone plays a Rogue's Passage in their Voltron deck, and it just makes it so they win so easily because their giant commander can't be blocked. Or they play in a deck that cares about damage, like ours does, a Glacial Chasm, or something else that really either prevents us from executing our game plan or empowers their game plan so much that it's a threat that needs to be answered. Demolition Field is my answer to that. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, but we can also pay to, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls, and that opponent can then search for a basic land and put it on the battlefield untapped and shuffle. And so can we. So we're not down a land from our Demolition Field, and neither are they down a land from the land we blew up. But we did answer a threat, which is Magic is a game of interaction, so that's reasonable, and we both have mana available to us right away, of course, assuming we both had basics left in our library. So yeah, I don't think anyone has much of a problem with Demolition Field even if they don't like Mana Denial. Finally, we've got Mystic Sanctuary, which was reprinted in Secrets of Strixhaven Commander, but cost a couple cents more than the original printing from Throne of Eldraine, my favorite set, so we're still using the original. This is a typed land. It's an island. It's our 26th typed land. So therefore, inherently, it taps for blue, and it enters tapped unless we control 3 or more other islands, which again, doesn't have to be basics. And when it enters untapped, we can put target instant or sorcery from our graveyard on top of our library. Now that's not as good as putting it back in our hand, but it's almost as good. It gives us the ability to recur a spell just by playing blue, basically. So the cost of inclusion is so low for this, I think it's totally worth running in this deck. And that sums it up. Again, I'm releasing new Secrets of Strixhaven Commander decks every Thursday through the end of June when the Marvel Superheroes set drops. So let me know in the comments if you'd like to see me build a specific commander that I haven't already built, or a style of deck. And that should be it. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live, consider becoming a member of the channel, and yeah, remember most of all that Magic is fun. You should play more Magic.